Good afternoon from Spain. Good morning to those of you that are watching us from Latin America. Welcome to sorry, another webinar of the Structuralist Development Macroeconomics Research Group. My name is Jesús Ferreiro. I'm a professor of economics at the University of the Basque Country in Bilbao, in Spain, and I will chair this webinar that is devoted to the relevant topics of the artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence. With this objective, we have the pleasure to count on the participation of Professor Ioana Negru, who is a professor at the Lucian Blaga University of Sibiu in Romania, that will give us the seminar with the title Artificial Intelligence, a Friend or a Foe? Case Study on Economics and Critical Thinking Skills. Will you realize from the title, the webinar is devoted to how the phenomenon, the spread of the phenomenon of the generative artificial intelligence is affecting not only in general to our lives, but also to the academic activity that all of us are developing in our respective centers, regardless if we are talking about we are working as a, and how it affects, for instance, to our job as a professor, as a researcher, or as a professor, and how this how can be the impact of this kind of tools, and how can it be regulated in order to get the highest benefit as possible. So, as I told you, I want to welcome to Ioana Negru, and we will now start with the presentation of her. Once that Ioana finishes her presentation, I will open the door to different questions and comments that can come from the people that are attending this webinar. So I hope you enjoy it, and welcome, Ioana. So when you want it.
Thank you very much, Professor Ferreiro. And I would like to thank the organizers of these seminars for inviting me to say a few words about such a challenging and interesting topic that will and is likely to affect everyone, the artificial intelligence. I'm going to share the slides shortly with you, but before then, I just wanted to say the literature is huge. I'm actually preparing a paper with a colleague from London Metropolitan University on the impact of artificial intelligence upon critical thinking skills, the use of generative artificial intelligence instruments, or JAI, as I will shorten it. But I don't have yet the empirical data ready. Instead, I would like to channel or focus my thoughts on two debates that I think are interesting for all of us as researchers and instructors. One important thread of ideas that is coming from the literature and from the discussions among stakeholders, not just universities, but publishers, journals, and so on, is this debate whether we should regulate it. We have an ethical framework around the use of AI, or we should be more laid back about the use of artificial intelligence tools in academia. So this is one. I have just a few thoughts, a few ideas that are coming from publishers and so on. And the second debate that it caught my eye, and I think for me was interesting, and I hope it will sparkle some interest with you as well, is this debate whether the use of JAI can enhance critical skills or not, whether it's of various users, not just students, but also us, the researchers, and the instructors. So a few thoughts, and I welcome your comments. This is work in progress. Maybe I don't know enough about artificial intelligence yet, but I'm happy to share with you all the ideas that it might come. So may I proceed, Professor Ferreiro, to share my slides?
Of course. Yes, you can do it.
Okay, I will post now. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, so I will start my presentation. Interestingly enough, I don't know, I hope it's of interest. In Romania, there isn't yet a lot of debate about the use, just amongst us, the colleagues. Of course, most of the universities are saying we will use responsibly and ethically the AI, but there aren't much guidelines, so an official debate is lacking for the moment. But I think it has started in many countries like UK. I'm familiar with the UK because I spent 17 years in the UK academic system teaching in Cambridge and SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. So I will have a few examples from there. Okay. So as I told you at the beginning, I'm going to talk about a few general considerations, a few studies about the impact of JAI on research, teaching, and assessment of students, some issues about AI policies of publishers and journals, and some thoughts about the case study on critical thinking skills, formation of economics and in economics and business studies, and some concluding thoughts. Okay, so some preliminaries. I'm sure you will agree with me that the same way in which the appearance or the emergence of internet has revolutionized the world at that time, artificial intelligence, I think, is a paradigm shift and is here to stay. And I think one important argument is how can we use it, of course, in an ethical and responsible way to enhance our research, our teaching practices, and our assessment of students. Of course, very important because a lot of the employers now are using AI, so they expect graduates who have critical thinking skills, the new buzzword, but also they expect digital literacy and the knowledge of AI instruments. So we need to prepare our graduates to face the new realities. So as I said, we hope, and I think this is clearly a paradigm shift. As you obviously know, when I'm thinking about JAI, the generative artificial intelligence instruments, and I'm thinking here about software like ChatGPT or Midjourney or Claude or other instruments, they used to extract data, and unfortunately, very often without consent. They read papers, they summarize papers, they write papers, they build lesson plans, they evaluate students. So many useful things. And of course, there are authors, I think, or let's say the general trend in the literature is a very positive attitude towards the use of AI. I met also very pessimistic papers, which were trying to suggest that we will be replaced by AI if we're not careful. As researchers, as teachers, there will be schools where there will be no teachers teaching, but just with the help of AI, the students will learn, and so forth. There are authors like Eke 2023, which are suggesting that we should ban altogether the use of AI in universities. So, but in general, the trend is quite a positive attitude, and an attitude of, okay, let's do it, but let's be careful how we use it. So there are different degrees of care, let's say, in all these approaches. Of course, the JAI technologies I think they are promising a new world order. And as we all are aware, there is a world competition for the best and most efficient AI. Since the OpenAI has launched in November 2022 ChatGPT, as you know, last year, China has launched DeepSeek. We tested that in our universities, and I think our conclusion was that the Chinese have rushed to launch DeepSeek and is not finished. As I was telling our colleagues here in Spain, in Bilbao yesterday, I tried with my own information, and I was attributed a book that I have never written with Randall Ray. a famous post-Keynesian economist. Also, according to Nature, a few weeks ago, India has started the work to build its own AI. So it's becoming more and more important to have our own AI systems, and there is a lot of competition around. I will start with a few pieces that I thought were interesting. Last year, in 2023, I saw this article, every student uses AI, lots of teachers don't. Students are well ahead, published in the Mail in the UK. And the examples of the use of AI in Irish schools. And Patrick Hickley, the gentleman in the center of this article, is a teacher trained in AI, and he was trying to convince the audience about the good use of AI, and arguing that, for instance, for assignment or giving feedback to students, it used to take 10 days to mark essays, now it takes 1. Or the fact that it could provide a solution to the demoralizing factors in the Irish system of education. I mean, in the sense that there are very high workloads, could be helpful from admin point of view, could create engaging lessons, could make learning relevant, could create different resources. So in general, it could be helpful as a substitute, basically. And I would like to cite from his last conclusion. I think one of the main idea that comes is that AI could be just a teacher assistant and not a replacement. And this was officially stated by the Department of Education in Ireland. So it could never replace teacher, but it could just show, we need to show teacher how AI works. Basically, he was concerned, and this is the citation, I'm very concerned about students using it without guidance. If teachers don't know what to do, they are not in a position ethically. So he was concerned that AI can give a lot of errors, as you know, as I'm sure you probably know better than I do, can give hallucinations, errors, bias. But he was basically concerned that there could be no learning, and that the students have no understandings of that, and there are a lot of dangers in misusing AI. And this is where teachers could contribute. A few studies done in UK about the level of knowledge about AI. As I said, these are just preliminaries. Lauren Langru in Education Week, a study made on why instructors do not use AI in the classroom. So some of them were saying that the survey was done on 498 teachers in November 2023. 46% of teachers haven't explored these tools because they have other priorities. 36% of teachers say, I don't know how to use these tools. 33% declare my district hasn't outlined a policy on how to use the technology appropriately. 30% state, I know something about using these tools, but I'm not sure how to effectively incorporate them into instructions. Further on, another study made by study.com called Productive Teaching Tool or Innovative Teaching, a study made on 100 professors and 10,000 students, analyzed perceptions on ChatGPT. So 82% of college professors are aware of ChatGPT, 72% are concerned about its impact on cheating. So I think this issue of plagiarism and cheating appears quite a lot in these studies. 34% of all educators believe that ChatGPT is better to be banned in schools, while 66% support students' access to it. On the other hand, over 89% of students admit they have used ChatGPT for assignment submission. So quite a big difference between the students who are very positive in using the tools and ChatGPT, and the college professors, which they are aware, but they're not that comfortable with being used. And before I start to discuss some publishers and universities guidelines, of course, I mean, I was discussing yesterday with colleagues here in Bilbao, maybe journals and publishers who, of course, get a lot of funds from publications, from our books, from our journal articles, maybe they would like to preserve this kind of advantage. And maybe that's why they're coming up with these guidelines for the ethical use. But I think this is very important. And I will argue later on, I think it's not necessarily an overall, I don't know, a constraining view that I believe in, but much more that I think it's important to preserve authorship and the merit of ideas. And I think all the progress that science has made in the past 200-300 years could be detracted by this an overly loose use of AI, I think. So coming back to this 24th of April 2025 interesting article in the Nature, Science sleuths flag hundreds of papers that use AI without disclosing it. So very interestingly, an article in the Nature about various researchers who have created programs to detect the use of AI without disclosure, and made journals to retract a lot of papers. So there are these colleagues of us interested in disclosing the use of AI. I mean, for instance, the article is mentioning that hundreds of cases discovered of papers silently corrected AI phrases removed without acknowledgement, which I think is a potential threat to scientific integrity. And of course, as you know, the chat box are generating certain phrases which I think appear in these papers created by AI. And some of them are things like regenerate response, or as of my last knowledge update, or as an AI language model. So as I give you some examples, in 2024, there was a case of a retracted paper in the radiology case reports by R. Bader et al. And I think this paper contained the phrase, "I am an AI language model." So for some reason, the author has not spotted it, the editors, the reviewers, the typesetters, everyone else included in the productive process, which is quite interesting. So it obviously is a failure of peer review in a way. In the article, there is a scientist which is not given the full surname, but just the first name, Glynn, and he created an online tracker called Academ.ai and listed 700 papers, 13% of which published by Springer, Elsevier, or MDPI. Also, before I go to the interesting part of this article, Artur Zrzelecki, a researcher at the University of Economics in Katowice in Poland, gathered examples of undisclosed AI use in papers. So in a study published in December 2024, he identified 64 papers categorized by the Scopus academic database to be in the top quartile for their field. So undisclosed AI, which is quite a lack of integrity, I would say. Also, here we come to the interesting work that Guillaume Cabanac, an IT computer scientist at University of Toulouse, with also another colleague, Cyril Abbé from Grenoble-Alpes in France. They created a few tools, and Labé's work helped journals to retract more than 120 manuscripts. And to raise awareness, these two French colleagues, academics, they emailed publishers and posted their findings on social media and in PubPeer, a post-publication peer review site. So they are following not just after publications, actually, these papers. The other thing that they've done is to publish a website, problematic paper screener, for flagging and reporting questionable manuscripts. So, which is obviously, I think, a lack of, or a failure of peer review. So very interesting that some colleagues of us are actually tracking the use of AI without disclosing it. I've tried to inquire with some journals. I was curious, being a heterodox economist, how different editors view the question on what is their AI policy, because it affects all of us as researchers. I cannot disclose the name of the journals, but to one at the end. So Journal 1, and this seems to be the essence of most policies, or the minimum that is required. So the authors of articles must show transparency in using AI instruments to craft papers. Journal number 2, Springer does not yet offer tools to check AI, so it's a journal published by Springer. I've received some announcements, but up to now, Springer only offer an authenticate report to support checking for possible plagiarism. So authenticate is their program at Springer with which they check plagiarism. Journal number 3, which is published by Taylor and Francis. We are keeping a close watch. We ask contributors to declare whether they have used it for their submission and to describe how they have used it. In our view, using it for improving the presentation is not a problem, but using it for more substantive tasks is a problem. So here we have to be very careful because the policies amongst journals differ. At Springer, for instance, they recognize that addressing with AI things like grammar, punctuation, structure, language for non-English speakers, for instance, shouldn't be flagged. So it should be accepted to use AI for these problems. But there are other positions of other journals who maybe forbid those things. Also, one of the journals that is dear to me because it talks about pluralism, International Journal of Pluralism in Economics Education, the editor told me the IJPPE has a strict policy forbidding AI and to use a disclaimer. So this journal is published by Inder Science, I think in Switzerland, if I know correctly. So as you see, the policies are quite different amongst journals. And I guess whenever we start writing a paper, we ought to consult the editor to see what are their policies regarding AI. Once we declare we use the AI, then they can check further and is under editorial investigation. A few considerations about ethical use of generative AI. I think a few ideas. First of all, I think there is a dual responsibility. We have on one side the responsibility of the creator of JAI, who is storing, creating the data, making this data available, and the responsibility of the user of JAI, all of us who are using these generative AI instruments. JAI produces, as you know, vast amounts of data. And as I tried it myself, there could be bias. It could be gender bias. It could be bias regarding heterodox economists, Western centrism, by the way, centrism, thinking about all the debates about decolonizing science in the past 5 years or so, discrimination. There is many times no context in terms of culture and the social context in which data is generated. And of course, all these problems raise other issues. Unauthorized access to sensitive information, a violation of intellectual copyrights, violation of privacy and confidentiality of data, and this obviously, if we have all this could undermine the values and experiences of learning of various users and students. I think some of these things need to be respected, things like copyrights and so on. Many times the users and students are not aware of such biases, and they lack the knowledge to critically assess the quality and validity of the information. Obviously, I think this poses an issue for AI access. If AI is allowed in universities, for instance, then all students should have access. We should have no inequality. We should have equity. We should have access in all areas, so think about the differences and the inequality of location and so on. Of course, there are issues about the integrity of the academic process with the assignment submission, and what is paramount, the transparency in the communication between staff and students for recognizing the merit and the own efforts, especially when it comes to student work. So a few ethical, I think, considerations that all publishers and journals and universities are concerned with. Okay, a few ideas now about publishers. So I have a few thoughts about Taylor and Francis or Routledge, and about Springer. And there is a small, I hope it works, a small YouTube, which I'm going to play very soon, when it comes to the use, what the Springer CEOs are saying about artificial intelligence. So Taylor and Francis, the issues that I have already mentioned, they try to make or pay attention to the inaccuracies, falsities, as they call them, hallucinations, bias, which is hard to detect, verify, and correct. Sometimes the work is not precisely attributed. As I told you, I was attributed books that I never written. Also, they are used by third-party platforms, these generative AI tools, that do not offer sufficient standards of confidentiality, data security, and copyright protection. And of course, this can infringe on the rights of authors and publishers, amongst others. Very interesting. I think Routledge is very clear that they have some generic rules, but the authors are always advised to consult the editor of the journal prior to submission. So for instance, if you use AI in an article, they mention that you should put that into the methodology section or the acknowledgement section. But if you do a book with AI, with the use of AI, you need to mention that in the book proposal phase, so you can build a book with full transparency with the publisher. So you need to say the tool you've used, how it was used, and the reason for the use. Also very interesting, you're not allowed to, it shouldn't be used in the way that will replace researchers and author responsibilities. They mention very clear that AI cannot be an author because it cannot sign agreements, publishing agreements. They cannot take full responsibility for the content, and many other examples. You're not supposed to generate abstracts using AI or alter the data, so synthetic data generation. They're also against code generation without revision. So a few rules in place. The other interesting thing is that they mentioned the responsibility of editors and peer reviewers. There is no way under which you should upload unpublished manuscripts. And from what I've read, I mean, it's very difficult for me to test it directly. And I think for all of us, everything that counts as input from me, for instance, in a JAI, in a generative text, or of other images and so on, instrument, is basically output for other users in the way that these large language models are trained. So we cannot use or upload unpublished manuscripts. The peer reviewers, because they're experts in their fields, are expected to do their own reviews. We cannot submit as reviewers, peer reviewers, articles or portions to get feedback or other thoughts about the reviews. So Taylor and Francis are quite upright about this, which I found interesting. When it comes to Springer, and I will try to run the 5 minutes YouTube. I will just give you a few thoughts beforehand. The CEO, Frank Peters, says that they invested 370 millions in all sorts of parts which link to AI, and they made accessible more than 300,000 books, a lot of articles, over 1.25 million articles which are open access, and so on. And they also praised the fact that in 2010-23, they launched the first book which used ChatGPT in finance. I can send you the link if you like. It's not entirely written by AI, but it's basically, there are authors as well, but they only use ChatGPT to prompt and to adapt the articles. So it's the ChatGPT has a lot of contribution to the making of the actual book. The interesting thing that also Springer, they seem to be the most positive about AI and using AI. For instance, the non-native English speakers, they need 50% more time to write the papers, and they devised a few instruments that can help with the translation of research manuscripts and articles in various languages, which I thought it could be of use mentioning it. So I will try to run now this short YouTube. If you think it doesn't work, please tell me, and I will skip over it. I hope you'll enjoy it. There are some interesting elements there.
A recent survey published by science journal Nature has shown that scientists are cautiously open to the benefits AI will bring to their research. We spoke to Springer Nature, publishers of that survey, at the Frankfurt Book Fair about what AI means for researchers and publishing in general.
Technology is advancing fast. The infusion of AI into our everyday lives is both thrilling and frightening in equal measures. When it comes to scientific research, using AI can't be an experiment. Reports need to be quantified, trusted, and ethical. Springer Nature supports scientists and researchers to make the most of emerging tech so they can produce results quicker and more accurately than ever before.
We're a publishing company, but you could actually argue we're a technology company. If you look at the build-up of our staff, and that's very similar to if you look at our competitors, roughly a third of our roles are actually technology roles. We've built up quite a significant number of staff dedicated to AI. I think that's important because you need to have that knowledge internally to understand how it affects your processes and the value proposition that you can offer to the market. If you look at our authors, they don't write because they like to write. They don't read because they like to read. They like to do research. And for them, in a way, writing or reading are just supportive of the research process. So whatever we can do by using technology to make that process easier for them, that's something that they will embrace.
Providing access to high quality and accurate research is at the core of what Springer Nature does. Technology speeds up the process, but it requires a helping hand from the team.
For a lot of our customers, it's sort of like an explosion. It's recognizing everybody goes at a different pace. There's always some early adopters, there's always some second and third adopters. Everybody can go at that different pace, but we still play a role all the way along.
So this is going to be the future of how AI and humans are going to come together and how AI is going to augment the human capability. AI will help us to build a faster, a safer, and a more enjoyable publishing experience. Tools which help you as a researcher to go from the research that you did in a lab, the data that you generate, to actually capturing it and writing it into a paper. We also use AI to make sure that we're able to translate books, to make sure books and content is available in the languages that people speak, because at the end of the day, the language for research cannot just be English. Going forward, is we actually harnessing AI not just to detect issues with the writing, but also detect issues with gels, bots, pictures, etc.
With more researchers and authors embracing AI, there's a real excitement at Springer Nature Group. They're using their expertise to offer a helping hand in the move towards a more digital world.
If you just go back in time, there was not a single time where technology didn't make a big change to our industry. AI especially has the opportunity to help on the whole journey our authors, our customers, to thrive, to get faster, to get published. There's sanity checks, there's quality checks that we need to do. There are sanction checks we need to do. All those things can be done in an automated way where you don't have to have humans doing the job. Most important when it comes to AI is that we have our principles, making sure that on AI, the human is always in the loop, even more is always in the driving seat to drive that, and we never let the machine decide.
Over 50% of researchers are using AI tools already, according to a recent survey conducted by Nature, Springer Nature's flagship scientific journal. Among those who used AI in their research, more than 1/4 felt that AI tools would become essential to their field in the next decade. But 2/3 said they were concerned that it could be used to spread misinformation.
When we asked the researchers, again, over half of them said they would definitely be using AI, be critical to what they do in the future. Content is obviously key to that. And we have first ChatGPT book, and that was fascinating watching the authors and the editors and our technology people interact and how they can work with Gen AI to extract content and how they can, more importantly, make sure that that content can be trusted as well. Trust sits right at the heart of research, and that's, we see ourselves as guardians working with the researchers, ensuring that the research we publish can be trusted. So in the AI space, we're approaching this in much the same ways.
AI isn't a fad, it's here to stay, and it could bring about a hugely positive impact to society if used correctly and in partnership with companies who are putting tech development at the heart of their mission.
I think to me, very interesting in the sense that AI is seen as somehow as a tool, let's say, as an assistant, and the humans driving this through. I will just recalibrate here. I hope you can see this again. So very interesting to know a little bit about the publishers, but maybe I was thinking that it could be interesting for you to remind ourselves what are the rules for researchers and examiners at the University of Cambridge, which is a model university for us, I would say, for me is at least. They were more generic in their statements. They said things like, we may use generated tools to help research topic. We may use text generators to spark inspiration. Definitely a definite statement. We do not publish any content that has been written 100% by text generators. And we do not input any sensitive data or embargo data. Also, not necessarily a rule, but more of a thing to do daily usage of JAI, instilling a habit of sharing amongst them the use of JAI in the daily work. For examiners, something that caught my eye, a few things. A lot of us are thinking, how can we use it in teaching to generate tests, to generate lessons, to give feedback, and so on. At the University of Cambridge, for instance, a clear rule that a student using any unacknowledged content generated by artificial intelligence within a summative assessment, so in a formative you can, but in a summative you cannot, as though it is their own work, constitutes academic misconduct. So a clear negative thing there. Also for the examiners, whether they use tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google Bard, or Microsoft Copilot, they cannot analyze the work submitted by students and provide written feedback. As you remember at the beginning, there was that article from the Mail in which the tutor was saying that instead of 10 days, it takes now 1 day to mark everything. Because they even argue lack of clarity and uncertainty of how these tools use or store input data is not permitted to share student IP or submitted work without permission from the students. So in some universities, you're not allowed to use these tools for giving feedback to students. And talking about students, something that is debatable by all the universities in UK, as I said, in Romania, unfortunately, I don't have examples to give you because there isn't a formal debate yet. Here, a scale on which various programs decide from using no AI at any point during the assessment. So, for instance, when students do essays or dissertations or other type of written work, to full AI, where they do not have to specify which content is AI generated. But there are different positions in between. Still, for instance, you can use it for creating structure, generating ideas, but no AI content is allowed. Or cases where you could use AI, but you need to put the original work in an appendix. So the examiner sees what you have done originally and how, in what way AI has contributed to your assessment, and or it needs to be cited. So different degrees in which, I mean, they can decide on student assessment. But this is interesting. A lot of my colleagues in the UK, ex-colleagues, are saying at a lot of universities, University of Oxford Brookes in Oxford, the newer university in Oxford, or London Metropolitan University, or other newer universities, there is obviously a statement you might know that in UK, universities are divided into the ex-polytechnics, so newer universities, post-1992, and the Russell Group universities. And I think the Russell Group has a position already public made on the use of AI. But the interesting thing is making a lot of lecturers going for exams. So replacing all types of assessment by using written exams. So giving them assignments or things to be assessed, to be evaluated, in which AI cannot interfere. Although I'll show you an interesting example from Professor Jeff Schneider from Bucknell University in a minute. I have here two considerations that I wanted to share with you. And before then, of course, all these issues about written exams raise issues of, again, equity of evaluation. A lot of students who do worse in written exams and do better in other types of assessments, like oral exams, or I don't know, oral presentations with policy papers, different types. So it's very important to think about how we create thinking skills and different other skills via assessments, and also not to disadvantage certain students. Anyway, Mario Rizzo from New York University said something interesting 2 days ago, and I wanted to post there. Maybe we can debate all these ideas. He says, I just read a very alarming article in your magazine about the wide use of AI in universities, essentially cheating and not learning much. Under current and foreseeable conditions, the universities cannot stop this short of only in-person written exams and or oral exams, no research papers. So this is funny in a way, although I know this is very serious. So Trump will not be the one to destroy universities as we know them. Misuse of AI will. Of course, Donald Trump has been cutting the funds, the science funds and the funding at many universities and many programs, which is very worrying for the academia in US. On the other hand, Geoff Snyder, I thought this was interesting, from Bucknell University. AI has been wormed its way into in-class essays. I gave students some prompts ahead of time. It is very clear that some students has ChatGPT write an essay in response to the prompt, memorized the essay, and regurgitated it on the test. So this is interesting how students always find a way out. I guess I can't give them prompts in advance anymore. And he says, I worry about the current generation that uses AI as a substitute for complex thinking. So in the comments to this posting, there was another professor at another US university who was saying that what he has tried to do is give the students an exam based on hallucinations in ChatGPT. So false information. And he gave them the task to the students to correct ChatGPT. And he said that the marks have been very low. I thought this was very, very interesting. In any case, whether we like it or not, I think the tendency amongst universities, publishers, journals, and so on, it is to find a framework in which to use AI. So I think it's important to think about. And a lot of universities in Europe are trying to, or have come up with these guidelines, some of them more detailed, like University of Venice. I can share with you a few examples later on if we have time. And others, less, a bit like Cambridge University, much more kind of generic statements. Okay, so the last part of my presentation, if you think I have spoken too much, I can rush now. We can detail these things later. I have my small case, a few thoughts about the critical thinking skills. And the essential question for me is whether the use of AI or the over-reliance on AI can actually help with the formation of critical thinking skills. And I know I've read something interesting these days about the fact that in the past, the critical thinking skills was for the elites. But now, of course, there is a tendency, and all the employers, so the buzzword is the critical thinking skills. So everyone needs to be elevated to this, which is quite a daunting task, I think. Anyway, I don't know. Obviously, this shows the inequality within the higher education systems. But I wanted to think a little bit about economics. And my point of departure of my argument is this. In any normal economics textbook, and I took the example of Gregory Mankiw and Mark Taylor in 2010 economics, there is a start of the textbook with principles thinking like an economist. Although a lot of the mainstream economists, I think they don't talk about critical thinking skills, but they talk about these principles and thinking like an economist. And of course, most of the times they mean analytical skills. What I think many authors do not mention the fact that you need a combination of theory, of case studies, examples from economic news and debates, and how can we practice this way of thinking. And of course, if you look in a general textbook, you'll find all this. I will skip over this because you all know it. Usually we have discussions of principles of economics. So instead of talking about critical thinking skills and what they should be, you get an idea about, okay, is economics a science? What is the role of objectivity? What is the science method? This is all good and normal is useful, but I think it should be more diverse, and I will explain in a moment what I mean. So I have a quote from Keynes in 1925, just to remind ourselves about what Keynes thought, what makes a good economist. This is part of the collections of the works of Alfred Marshall, edited by Pigou in 1925. So he says something interesting, that even the competent economists are the rarest of birds. So rara avis, okay, an easy subject at which very few excel. He talks specifically that we need to combine talents. A good economist must be a mathematician, a historian, a statesman, and a philosopher. He must understand symbols, speak in words, and I'll go at the end. He must be purposeful and disinterested in a simultaneous mood, as aloof and incorruptible as an artist, yet sometimes as near the earth as a politician. So idealist and pragmatic at the same time. I think it's an interesting quote, but the important thing is that this idea, the essence of this quote, it necessitates a multitude of abilities and the capacity to combine abilities to problems that need solving. So we have no recipe, but universities need to build curricula to achieve this combination of abilities. And something that the regretted David Collender used to say, professors need to teach with modesty and care. They need to convey that a mathematical model does not provide the absolute truth, nor a historical or an institutional theory. But coming back to our discussion, what are critical thinking skills and what is the relationship with generative AI tools? So can JI replace our Socratic techniques, when we are trying to arrive at the truth with slow strategies? Can it help form the critical thinking skills, the use of JI? And here I'm a bit skeptical in the form that they are now. They might evolve in the future, but there are clear some lessons that will come back in a moment. Very quickly, what do I mean by CTS, by critical thinking skills? I think I'm familiar with the idea where we demonstrate an open mind, we tolerate ambiguity and uncertainty, we have a skeptical attitude, inquiring, questioning facts, ideas, theories, and so on, and we are curious from an intellectual point of view. So this is what I mean by critical thinking skills. And I just want to remind ourselves two taxonomies or two frameworks. One is the famous 1956 Bloom's taxonomy, where Bloom was an educational psychologist at the University of Chicago, and he has a theory, his theory saying that we should progress slowly through our learning and teaching strategies from lower order thinking skills to higher order ones. So starting from remembering, understanding, applying, and then achieving the skills of analyzing, evaluating, and creating, which are very much important and part of what intelligence is and these cognitive abilities that they are so crucial for us. The other one, which I think heterodox economists love, because it highlights the philosophy of teaching of a pluralist economist, is the Paris Scheme of Cognitive Development from 1970. And I'm not going to say too much. He has a similar focus. We need to progress in the so-called transitions from lower level skills to higher level skills. But he talks of stages. And here is a newer version of Paris Scheme, where there are these phases. So I'm not going to say too much because I want to get to the end. I don't want to bore you. You know all this far too well. He was arguing that we should help students progress from this attitude of black and white thinking, where we have fixed and objective answers, from dualism, to make students feel comfortable with the fact that there is uncertainty, ambiguity, that experts do not have all the answers, that there are multiple answers, but not keep them into a contextual relativism, to make them understand that opinion sometimes is insufficient. We need some criteria on which to determine the truth of various statements. But of course, very important to bring values in, personal values. So we need to make students in mode 4 contextually, to make them responsible, to make appropriate decisions. So understand that not just theories and ideas and multiplicity is important, and each with its own truth, but also values and so on, and be able to choose responsibly, which is quite a difficult way to do, but through pluralist courses we can definitely do that. So how can we replace, or how can we use AI to not necessarily to substitute, but to help with this complex way of building critical thinking skills? Because in a very basic sense, it seems like a student who over 3 years of study is doing nothing but overlying going for answers in ChatGPT. I don't see how this, in an extreme way, can actually build critical thinking skills. Now, the interesting thing is I haven't found many studies in the literature, so there isn't much empirical evidence between critical thinking skills and JAI. That's why I was thinking to write this paper that is not ready yet and is just work in progress. I found an interesting paper of Essian et al. 2024, and they have the following research question: what is the impact of AI text generators on critical thinking skills in UK business school postgraduate students? And the study is made on, is not a very extensive study, is made on just 107 postgraduate students, divided into 2 groups, the control group and the experimental group. Both of them were pre-tested about their knowledge of JAI, of artificial intelligence, with the experimental group being allowed to use ChatGPT. What are the findings? I'm not going to give you more details, but the findings suggest something interesting, that AI text generators were helpful for some abilities, the lower level ones, the ability to remember or to understand complex concepts, with the appliers a bit more dubious. I mean, something, but not very definite. And the higher order skills, no significant impact. So very interesting. It shows the case study. It showed moderate yet significant, moderate improvements in advanced aspects of critical thinking. So creating, evaluating, analyzing. So AI was less helpful and less able to build these skills. So as Larson is saying, JAI makes information more available, but also makes users less likely to question or expand on the information they are provided. And of course, here, another quote from Deneke et al. 2023, and I will skip to conclusion. The competence, I will go straight away, the competence of formulating thoughts may be reduced when JAI can formulate text from a set of keywords. So again, how can we use AI to help the formulation of critical thinking, of building these skills? I think this is not that straightforward. So let me go to concluding thoughts. I think, as I said at the beginning, AI is here to stay. We should see in JAI more of a friend. We should find ways to use JAI in a responsible and ethical way. I think we need more empirical studies to establish the link between JAI and critical thinking. I think this is very important. I think there is a trend now that all the research entities are and universities and education entities adopt rules. I think it's important to know how to use it. And here, an idea that I have, I think any university needs to organize courses of teaching with students. I think if we are really worried about the impact on student learning and student formation, I think we should show students how to use it and be a guide for their use. So as I said, it can be used with ethics and responsibility. A course in the first year would be the best idea to introduce to students such courses. And of course, all professors need to be versatile, because it's all about digital literacy and creating equity amongst the users and in society, especially because we will depend on artificial intelligence in the future. Thank you very much. My apologies if I've spoken too much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ioana, for such an interesting and relevant presentation of an issue that probably will change not only our way of thinking, but also our way of working in academia in the next future. So, and now, well, before we start with the usual round of comments and suggestion and question from the floor, I want to start this part of the seminar with a recorded intervention of Professor José Luis Ferreiro, that due to personal reasons is not able to be participating in personal life in this seminar. So we are now going to show you in a small video with the comments and suggestions that he has made to Ioana's presentation. So Daniel, when you want. Maybe the image is freezing. So what we are trying to show you the video with José Luis' intervention.
In worst case scenario, I have noted down his questions, and I can briefly summarize them, but we can try again. I mean, they were very interesting questions, and I think
Ioana Negru. My name is José Ferreiro. Hi, Professor Ioana Negru. My name is José Luis Ferreiro. I'm Associate Professor of the Economics Department of the University of Brasilia and the coordinator of the Estruturas Development Macroeconomics Research Group. Professor Jesús Ferreiro sent to me yesterday, for your point of time, I'm talking to you on Tuesday night. Your presentation, I think, is a very interesting presentation. And in the last 3 to 4 weeks, I'm starting to use the artificial intelligence, generating artificial intelligence, basically for two purposes. The first purpose is divulgation of my own research. So I make a prompt and I ask for the Gemini artificial intelligence, is the one that I use, to analyze my contributions, my academic contributions in a specific field. For instance, Caldorian cumulative causation models, or my contribution to Green New Developmentalism, or my contribution to economic policy debate in Brazil. For me, it's interesting because if I have to write a post on my blog or a paper about these subjects, I will take 1 week, 15 days, maybe a month. But with artificial intelligence, I take 20 minutes. And since I know my own work, I know if the artificial intelligence is lying or not. So I think it's a potential use for artificial intelligence. The task of divulgation of scientific research, you know. And the second use that I made of artificial intelligence is to use it as a lab for ideas. For instance, I have an idea about, say, in economic history or in history. I love history, about the factors that allowed the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588. So I ask for the artificial intelligence to compare the hypothesis, the alternative hypothesis that I know that exist in literature about the defeat of the Spanish Armada. So it can be used as a laboratory for thought experiments. You know, thought experiments is a thing that we as an economists usually do. The problem is that contrary to what happens to our friends in hard sciences such as physics, we do not have a laboratory to test our ideas. So the artificial intelligence can be used in this sense, you know, to use like a lab to test ideas, to test the logical consistency of the ideas, and to test if the literature about the subject supports or not the idea that you have. So I think that is an important instrument for research using this way. But, well, my last comment is about the word intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not an intelligence in a strict sense, because intelligence, one attribute of intelligence is creativity. And artificial intelligence does not have creativity. As I understand, artificial intelligence is basically a giant searcher, mechanism of searcher in the web. So it is basically an improvement of the Google, but nothing more. Okay, but this is my considerations. I would like to have your comments. Unfortunately, I cannot be able to be in the webinar. I'm talking from yesterday from your point of view, but I like your presentation and I would like to have your comments. Okay, many thanks. Bye-bye.
So many thanks, Professor Ferreiro. So, Ioana, you have the word.
Yes, I would like to thank as well Professor Ferreiro. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I do apologize. Yes, for the comments. I have a few ideas actually. I understood that there was a comparison done between Gemini and ChatGPT, in the sense that I agree. I think there are some similarities and some differences. I like this idea that we can use AI as a lab of ideas. And I think a lot of ideas generated by ChatGPT can be used to search and verify the journals found with Gemini. But there are some differences. I mean, Gemini is similar with ChatGPT in the sense that both offer solutions and ideas. But Gemini was created for other purposes. Gemini is web improved, basically. So it was created by Google not to become irrelevant in the face of the development of ChatGPT in finding information. So even though we can use Gemini to test hypotheses, manage idea generation, as the professor was saying. I think it was built as a tool for search on the internet. So it can analyze ideas and hypotheses, Gemini, I mean, but I think it doesn't have the deep thinking that ChatGPT does. So here are my thoughts. So it's great to use it as a lab of ideas. I think an interesting thing about Gemini, for those who want to use Gemini, I think is a tool incorporated in Google Apps, in Mail, in Calendar, in Meet. And here are the benefits if you buy the version. And here we had an interesting discussion yesterday with the colleagues in Bilbao about the availability of these tools, and we should make knowledge available. I think if you buy the Pro Plus version of Gemini, how it's called, you receive access to help with it's like a mini assistant. They can even send emails for you. They can translate. They can revise the replies to emails and to messages. They can manage the calendar, the events. So Gemini can make a lot of it. It's like a mini assistant. But I think what is interesting is that it doesn't have the deep thinking feeling or possibilities that ChatGPT. And an interesting thing for maybe that I read recently is that ChatGPT now works on a version for Google to go alongside Google. So it might transcend Gemini soon. So it will make it obsolete probably. And I agree with Professor's comments on intelligence, artificial intelligence. That is not quite an intelligence. Of course, we cannot have intelligence without creativity. And I think it misses the human creativity, obviously. And from this point of view, I agree. But this is a good thing in the sense of showing the collaboration between humans and AI.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ioana. I would like to remember to all these people that are following this stream by the YouTube channel of the SDMRG group that you can send us or you can write your comments or questions on the chat in YouTube, and when you write it, we can forward it to Ioana so she can answer you. So please send your message if you want it. I would like, whilst we are waiting for this comment, I would like to well, I not know, it's a mix of a comment and a question. And it has to do with the fact that, as you have mentioned, Ioana, one potential problem of the generative artificial intelligence is that it can introduce, or perhaps we could say that it can reinforce the bias that we have, for instance, in terms of the results and opinions about certain themes or certain topics, that it is especially relevant in the sense that in some parts of the science, I'm thinking of social science, we don't have a unique theory or explanation of the phenomena we are studying. In this sense, at most in social science, we have different explanations about the nature of the problems, the existence of these problems, the origins, the consequences of this phenomena we are studying in terms of the policy, for instance, or the measures implemented to correct it or to vary the results. So this is a characteristic of the social science, not in science, where there is a single view about how the world works. So in this sense, since in social science, I'm thinking specifically in economics, we can talk of the system of, say, mainstream economics, along with different heterodox approaches, and where the dominance in the field of economics is within the mainstream views. If the the comment or the question is that if the use of AI cannot enlarge this bias, in the sense that probably the information that these tools will provide will be, in most cases, based on this mainstream analysis, on this mainstream approach. Considering the fact that there can be different alternative approaches, and we are not 100% sure what is the more, say, valid or the true explanation of the phenomena.
Right.
In this sense, perhaps the question or the second derivative is that if generative artificial intelligence would not be more valid and more useful in hard sciences than in social sciences.
A very interesting question. Yes, I agree. As I said, I think there are a lot of biases about heterodox economics, for instance. But no, I agree. I'm not sure what to say here. It could be more useful. You might be right that it could be more valid in natural sciences, although. Yes, I don't know. I think I'll think about that. Maybe I'll come back to this on the seminar. But I agree with you. I think you're right. I think he's less biased in natural sciences than in social sciences, and I'm thinking that maybe with time these instruments will evolve and maybe they will rectify this problem. It all depends on the information they draw upon. But I don't know how to remedy this. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm. And well, I would like to make some other question. It is related because we have the luck that Ioana could give another seminar this week here in Bilbao about ethics and economics. And in this, the question would be, this is very direct. But when we are thinking of the use of, as for instance, Professor Ferreiro has mentioned, of the use of these generative artificial intelligence tools to make our research, to what extent to consider it ethical that we claim, for instance, the authorship of a work, of a paper, research, of a chapter, when it has been actually written, perhaps not in its totality, but in its majority, by the artificial intelligence. Does it has an implication in terms of the ethics of the validity of claiming be the author of a high number of papers that have been developed thanks to the use of these tools? And also, it would be the second question that is closely related. In terms of our research, of the use of the research in terms of the use in the research area of the artificial intelligence, do you think, I have a personal question, do you think that it will have a direct impact on the quality of the research, or our contribution that we can do, or the papers and so on that we can elaborate, or perhaps the main impact would be in the quantity? And if there cannot be a trade-off, in the sense that perhaps thanks to the artificial intelligence, we will be able to increase our productivity in terms of the number of papers. But do you think that it can affect negatively to the quality of these papers, since probably most of them will be very similar to each other? Because it will lack of these characteristics of the creativity that implies the difference with existing literature on a certain topic.
Yes, thank you very much. They are great questions, and I have just a few intuitions, so to say. I will start with the second one. I think the impact will be more in terms of the quantity of the papers. I'm convinced. I think the general appeal amongst scientists of these new language learning models and AI instruments I think it rests on this idea of productivity and the fact that we could use it for various tasks that we do, including translations and everything that AI offers. And I foresee an increasing quantity more than in quality. And it's exactly as you suggest. I fear that is going to be a lot of similarities. And if the biases will continue to persist and they are not going to be addressed, I don't see how the increase will be in the quality of papers. Not as we stand now and some of the tools I used. I fear exactly as I heard when I saw that, or I heard from Springer that they have done this first book in finance with ChatGPT, that how many different books can you have based on the same information? So I fear that we'll have a lot of homogeneous outputs, and it all depends on the rules. I go back to that, and not because I like necessarily rules, although I do find the existence of them being useful in terms of how we function. I think is going to be important in terms of what we allow as publication, and it also depends, I think, on the way that, as we discussed yesterday, we assess university lecturers and professors. I think if there is a constant pressure to increase the outputs, I think a lot of our colleagues will appeal to AI, and in the extent that it's allowable, they will produce papers using AI. As I said, it all depends, I think, on the rules in terms of what will be acceptable by the universities, by the journals, and so on. So I do fear a little bit about the homogeneity of the outputs of these programs, despite the fact that you can prompt these programs and you can do some adaptations, but I do fear this. And the other question, let me see if I noted well, maybe you can remind me, is how can we validly claim that we are the authors, given that we are using of a paper, given that we are using AI? And again, I think maybe I'm not saying much, but I think we will have in the future rules about, again, what is allowable and how much can we claim authorship. I mean, if we get content or we can make literature reviews with the help of AI. I mean, for instance, I'm in a dilemma at the moment, how much I would like to use AI for my research, simply because I'm used with probably many of you, like many of you, to read everything myself. I'm not used with the idea that a program will give me the abstract of the summary of a paper. This is very alien to me. I think it will take me some time to adjust to this new reality. So I think for now, I've seen no discussions in the literature or by the publisher how much, in terms of as quantity assessment, how much is allowed in a paper to be done with the use of AI. I mean, what we know so far is that some journals say no AI, or it's allowed only in terms of grammar, punctuation, as I said in my presentation. So I think it maybe goes to what the science network and community will decide to be accepted. I think this will influence the legal use. I think there might be, I'm not very familiar with the legal issues surrounding yet AI and so on. But I think there'll be a connection with the ethical side and the legal side. So I'm a bit ambiguous maybe here, but I think we will claim it. I agree with you. Ethically, we cannot claim we are the author if AI has done the literature review, has done the content, has generated ideas. So yeah, this is how far I can maybe enlighten your very interesting question, very pertinent.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And just to make I think there is no other comment or question, just a final question, is that you have talked about the rules regarding the use of artificial intelligence. Nowadays, what you are showing is that they are only trying that the attempts of individual institutions, say, in some cases they can be universities, they can be publishers, they can journals that are trying to regulate the use of artificial intelligence in terms, for instance, of the use of teaching, and also in the terms of the research. So in this sense, my worry is that, well, if we don't have a level field for the game, it can create an unlevel competition where, for instance, the productivity or the results can be different among institutions depending on how they are regulating the use of artificial intelligence. If they have a relaxed regulation, for instance, it can be, I think in terms of for instance, the students, it can be, for instance, more easy for them, for instance, to pass some subjects. In terms of the research, it can be easier for researchers to produce a higher number of products, chapters, book, projects, and so on. And they will place in a difficult situation to those stakeholders in the worlds of academia, students and teachers, that are placed in institutions that have a more strict regulation on the AI. So can it create a stronger competition and a stronger fight between the academics as a consequence, given that we are all living, as we know, in a very competitive world? Can it create a high level of competition with all the problems that they can be derived from this situation in the world of academics?
This is another interesting, and it keeps about the vision. I have no idea what will happen, but I think we can logically conclude that it will cause some kind of competition. I think it will depend on the interplay between all the stakeholders, what the exact outcomes will be. I think there is a move everywhere, seems, away from the quantitative evaluations to the qualitative ones. So maybe AI won't win the battle, I think. But I must confess, I don't have an apocalyptic vision or a vision what will happen. I think we need to go with small steps. I think it will definitely create competition, but I don't know more. I don't have any other enlightenment ideas to bring to the discussion. It's a very interesting question. So I apologize for this. I will think about it and come back maybe with some thoughts to everyone about this.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if there is any comments or questions from the audience in the YouTube channel. No, I don't see anyone. So, well, I think that if there is no other question, we can finish this webinar. We thank to all the people that have joined our conversation. Thank you for their participation. And we hope to meet you all again in our next webinar of the Structuralist Development Macroeconomic Research Group. So thank you very much to all of you, and especially thank you very much for your participation to you, Ioana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.